Hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is Substantiating Claims for CBD Products. So this is a webinar I've been thinking of doing for quite a while now, and it's something I've been researching closely. Because obviously for ACE and Global Research, our main job as a research company revolves around claim substantiation. And as well as that, we don't want to just give you evidence of your claims. We want to give you the best marketing material possible to ensure that you can make a real success of your advertising campaigns. So it's not just thinking about the evidence you have to substantiate your claims, but also how you can market your products. And this is why CBD has become a really interesting topic for me, because I think the industry as a whole looks at CBD as what you can't say. What can we not say about products? What claims can't we make about products? And so I really wanted to come with a webinar today and talk about what claims you can make. Because I think as well, there is a hesitancy to put any claims on products for CBD. And there's almost a reliance as well on CBD and what the knowledge is out there. When consumers research CBD themselves, they learn about it. So a lot of CBD products just have CBD on there and nothing else. And that's all well and good, but we're now at a point where there's a lot of companies out here, there's a lot of brands that have CBD products. So how is your product going to stand out from the market if there are no claims about it whatsoever? Because you'll be exactly the same as everyone else. You'll just be relying on the fact that it has that ingredient in there. So this is what today's webinar is going to be about. I forgot to say, there's going to be a Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to note any questions as we go through the webinar. There'll be time to answer those questions at the end. And it's also being recorded, and I'll be sending this recording to everyone at the end as well. So I'll move on to the agenda now. So as I mentioned, I'm really going to concentrate today on what you can say about CBD products. And a lot of that will come from what the legal framework is. So we're going to be talking about regulations, generally for CBD, but mainly for advertising as well. And I'll give you a global picture because I know we've got a lot of people here from across the globe. So I want to really give an idea of what that looks like everywhere, to provide you the best tools possible in terms of looking specifically at your markets. We're going to look at consumer research. So there's a lot of claims again about CBD, and we'll talk about that as I go through, about what kind of products they are. But I'm really going to focus on consumer research, which is what we conduct, and what claims you can make using the evidence from consumer research. So it'll be very focused on the kind of consumer research evidence and what claims those are. Looking at the marketing claims for CBD specifically. So I'm not looking at claims about how much CBD it has in it or anything like that. We're looking at the marketing claims that you'll use in your adverts and on your pack copy to sell your product. I'll look at some non-compliant claims for CBD to give you an idea of what that looks like as well. What happens if you don't go by the regulations? What happens if you don't go through your evidence procedures and get evidence behind your claims? We'll look at some appropriate study design and methodologies, and I'm going to share a case study as well to give you guys an idea of how to run that study to get that evidence and what kind of claims can be made with it. So there's a lot to go through today. I'm giving you kind of an overall picture with all of it. Like I said, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, so I've got a lot to say and hopefully you'll find it all really, really insightful. So before we move forward, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Carys, and I am the Consumer Studies Consultant and Regulatory Specialist at ACE and Global Research. What that means is I work with clients on a one-to-one basis. If you haven't conducted consumer research before, or if you're looking at different methods of consumer research, different kinds of claims, different kinds of products, and I help you understand what evidence you'll need to substantiate your claims, and again, to make the best of your marketing as well. What claims can you be making about the product? What kind of marketing avenues can you go down by using research? What kind of research do you need to substantiate all of it? And I'm also looking at regulations generally. So when I talk about regulatory specialist, it's a very broad term. I'm always looking at the regulations which are associated with what we do with consumer research, but also which our clients need to be aware of. So it's very broad. Mainly I'm looking at cosmetics because we conduct a lot of cosmetic studies, but I'm also keeping up to date with regulations in other industries as well. So that's why we call it specialist, because like I said, it's so broad. So it's my specialism, but there is no kind of target of what regulations I'm researching 100% all of the time. So I have been working with the company for about 8 years now. I've managed many studies. I've learned how the industry has changed. I've learned how advertising regulations have changed. And all of that has helped me to really be a specialist in this topic, to talk about claims and talk about regulations behind claims. And hopefully I'll have some really interesting information for you. So to start off with, I want to look at the CBD market. Let's get an overview of what that is. Because we all know it's a hot topic. I think everyone who's here today knows it's a very hot topic. This is why you've joined. It's something that I think was seen as a fad, very much seen as a fad ingredient that was going to go into different products and all the different oils and everything like that. But I think we've proven now that it's here to stay. Every kind of market research report that looks at it is seeing growth year on year on year, which when it happens with certain ingredients, there's something I'm really common to see in things like hair care sector, for example. We'll see, hair care is increasing, but certain ingredients always come and go. CBD is definitely hanging around, I think, which proves a lot about the product, the ingredient as it is. It must work. And it must at least have a good following of people that believe in the product, otherwise it wouldn't be sticking around. So there's certainly some claims that can be made there. So I just brought out some market research basically to help kind of substantiate what I'm saying. So we've the cannabis oil market was valued at 4.6 billion in 2018 and has had an annual growth rate every year on year from then, with a predicted growth rate as well to 2025. The main kind of restrictions are out there as well. So as I'm saying, it's a really growing market, but it is one of the main ingredients that I've seen in my time doing these kinds of this kind of research that has a lot of restrictions and a lot of stop. The whole globe as a total is opening up to CBD. The regulations are being put in place. It's one of the most unregulated yet highly regulated ingredients I've ever come across, which makes it difficult to pinpoint. But at the same time, that's because it's new. And whenever it comes to something that's new and that it has a relation to, obviously it goes very to the cannabis plant, which has got really negative connotations, it's going to take a long time for those restrictions to be lifted and to be understood. There needs to be more research. The more we research this ingredient, the more things are going to get lifted. So there is obviously still markets. Saying several Asian and African countries have really got quite strict regulations on the legalization of even CBD in the market, but it's all changing all the time. So it's basically important to be aware of the restrictions, but also know that it's a really growing ingredient, it's a really growing market. So you want to continue to grow into it. I wouldn't let it put you off, I guess, what I'm trying to say. In Europe alone, the market is on course to grow by 400% over the next 4 years, which is huge, of course. Again, I said the growth rate is crazy. It's one of the highest growth rates of any kind of ingredient that I've seen, and it's just projected to keep on growing. 46% of Europeans view it favourably, and 77% also believe it should be accessible in some type of way. So obviously that's mainly talking about medicinal CBD, but obviously if medicinal CBD is seen positively, we'll see it seen positively in other product categories as well. I want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on CBD. Again, if you've watched my other webinars, I always push that it's really important at this moment. I don't want to ignore the global pandemic that's happening and pretend that hasn't had an effect on the market. That's had an effect on every single market in the FMCG sector. No matter what product it is, there's been a lot of impact there. So sorry, I've got some quotes again. So with Nutrition Insight, they interviewed a lot of people that are CBD manufacturers, that are CBD brands, and they asked them about what they've seen during the pandemic. And most of them are saying that although CBD has been put into the same bracket as things like vitamin C and echinacea in terms of really boosting the immune system, there has still been a huge hit in sales, because they really rely on brick and mortar storefront sales, and everything has moved online. So if you're a CBD brand, you haven't been online, you're going to see that there's been a huge hit there. Sorry, catch up a bit. So CBD has obviously got a huge following. Like I said, there's a lot of people that classify CBD as an essential item in terms of health. But again, it still has seen there's been a huge slowing initially when the pandemic hit. So even though it's something that's been seen as essential for health, it again had its own hit there. That has picked back up though again. And I think that's the case with every single product category I've been talking about recently. It's kind of at a point now where everyone that was very hard hit by the pandemic is now improving. We're all able to get a hold of those raw ingredients that we need to put, we need to manufacture our products, and the packaging. Obviously, that had a huge hit, and everything is, we keep saying it, going back to normal. I hate using that phrase because, as we keep saying, I don't think it's going to be normal for a long time, but things are kicking back in, and we are able to sort of see the impact that COVID-19 has had on certain industries is getting better. So like I said, I don't ignore it, but I also think that it's not as much of a threat to the CBD industry that it was a few months ago. It's looking much better now. So now I've talked about kind of CBD as a global market. As I said, I really want to concentrate this webinar on advertising regulations, because to know what claims you can say about a product, you need to be really aware of what the advertising regulations are within each country you're advertising. So I'm going to start off by talking about ad self-regulation, because this is how most countries in the world regulate regulate adverts in their countries. So it's really important to understand what ad self-regulation is, what the code of conducts look like, and how you can find out about who is regulating ads in those countries. So overall ad self-regulation, the idea is, the kind of global shared opinion is that advertisement should be legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So that's why the regulations exist. It's why we can't just sort of say what we want about the product. We need to have someone to regulate it, to say it fits into all of these, all these kind of keywords. It's mainly about making sure we're not misleading consumers. Our consumers are really important. No matter what industry you're from, no matter what category you're in, the consumers are really important, and their trust in every industry, in every product they buy, to know that they're not getting misled when they're purchasing a product, is what keeps the industry alive. So every time someone upsets these ad regulations, that is the kind of impact it can have. And I'll talk about this later, particularly with CBD, where there's been so many misleading advertisements. It's actually really negatively damaged the industry. Obviously, there's a lot of positive stuff as well, but this is why ad self-regulation exists. This is why the advertising standards authorities in certain countries say you can't say this about CBD, because they need to make sure that everything that's said about product is legal, decent, honest, and truthful. And until there's the evidence to substantiate everything, we can't ensure that those adverts are. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit. I'll come back to all of this throughout the presentation. But there's three parts of the industry of ad self-regulation. It's the advertisers who pay for the advertising agencies that are responsible for its form and content, and the media that carry it. So if you are from any of those parts, any of those sort of three parts of the industry, it is part of your responsibility to make sure that the adverts that you are putting out there are fitting into that legal, decent, honest, and truthful kind of keywords. Obviously, like I said, every regulation is slightly different, but as long as you are always thinking about your adverts with those keywords in mind and thinking about making sure you have evidence to substantiate all of your claims, you will be pretty safe no matter which country you're looking at. The advertising self-regulation agencies are also a platform for complaints. That's kind of mainly how they work. And again, I'll bring out some examples, but generally for most countries across the globe, what happens is they don't necessarily police the ads. They don't look at every new product that comes on the market and say, do these claims meet all of our code of conduct? What they do is they work on a complaint basis. So if you have a consumer or if you have a competitor who doesn't think that your claims are truthful, that they are honest, or that you have evidence to substantiate them, they will complain to the advertising authorities, who will then investigate your claims, investigate the evidence that you hold to support them as well. So that's the main thing to be concerned about. And especially again, like I said, I know this happens quite a lot with things like CBD. People put adverts out there that do have certain things you can't say on them and kind of get away with it. Because until someone complains, they don't necessarily have their adverts picked up on, depending on which country you're in. It's such a risky game, because the minute someone complains about your product, if you've been sort of saying these things on a lot of platforms and saying them on all of your products, you can have those products withdrawn from the shelves, you could have all of your adverts removed, and you could face fines in certain countries as well. So it's really not worth the risk. I think instead of kind of getting away with having these misleading adverts, don't do it in the first place. Make sure you've got your evidence. And again, that's what this presentation is really about. So to give you a kind of picture of how you find out about these advertising self-regulatory organizations, I always start off with the ICC, so you've got the International Chamber of Commerce, and they have a regulatory framework which countries adopt to make their code of conduct and to make the framework for how their company works, how the organization works. So that's currently used in 42 countries worldwide, and there are 52 countries that have advertising self-regulations at the moment. This updates all the time, by the way, so always important to look on here. So their framework it's basically, if any of those countries, those 42 countries you're looking at, are part of the ones you're looking at advertising, you know they're all going to fit into the same framework. So the same process is going to be in place, the complaints process, and the same code of conducts are going to be used. They'll be edited slightly for each territory, but again, it's just a really good starting point. If you don't really know where you want to market, but you know you want to start thinking about the claims, start looking at that framework and understanding what would be expected of your claims. And if you do know where you're marketing and you don't know where to start looking for who is the authority that will be looking at your ads and regulating your ads, look at the ICC and you'll see which countries have adopted their code. I also want to talk about ICAS, which is the International Council for Advertising Standards. Now, they were set up by the European Advertising Standards Alliance back in 2016. But basically how the EASA regulate standards in Europe, and underneath that you have all these countries that also have SROs that are advertising that are regulating the ads in their own country. And then the EASA is the overriding regulatory authority there. Then the EASA developed ICAS, which is a global organization. And it's essentially a council, which means that they can all share ideas about ad regulation. They can all share the same updates. So if there's any updates that they want to put out there, and there have been about things like COVID and things like that, all of that council would adopt those regulations as well. So I've just put the map there so you can see, like, dotted around who is part of the ICAS. Now, the reason I say it is because it's a really good way to look, again, for the advertising authorities. So if you know which countries you want to advertise in, ICAS has all the members stated there. But like I said, they very, very clearly share the same code of conduct, and they very clearly share the same updates. So if there's any update to kind of anything on the ICAS website, and one of the countries that you want to advertise in is a member, those updates will be in place in that country. So it's just a really good place to be completely on top of and really be engaged with in terms of where you're looking at advertising. I just wanted to pick out some examples as well to kind of focus it even more. Like I said, these organizations like ICAS, they're an overriding organization, they're a council, but they're not the ones that are actually receiving the complaints and taking action against the adverts. It's the countries in particular that are doing that. So in the UK, you've got the ASA, in India, the Advertising Standards Council of India, Australia, you've got Ad Standards, and Brazil, you've got the National Advertising Self-Regulatory Council. Now, these are all members of ICAS, so they all follow that code of conduct that I mentioned. In the USA, the ICAS member is actually the Better Business Bureau National Programs. So what they do is they put a framework out there for people to adopt and for people to understand and follow the code of conduct, but it's actually the FTC who deal with the complaint system about organizations. Now, it's really important to know about that because they're a federal agency. They're not a self-regulatory organization like in the other countries. They're federal, which means they're not just receiving complaints, but they also investigate claims as a whole. The FDA, who work with the FTC, are very heavy on CBD, and they put out a lot of warning letters about it because they know there's been a lot of misleading adverts in that industry with this ingredient. So what they'll do is they'll actually actively investigate what's on the market and create case studies so they can put out more regulations there. So it's very different. It's very, very targeted when you're looking at the FTC, rather than other countries where they might maybe deal with kind of complaints basis. Don't get me wrong. These self-regulatory organizations do put out information about kind of if there's a trend in issues with advertising. So the ASA have released a statement not long ago about CBD, but it's not in the same kind of sort of building lawsuits or anything like that, which really happens with the FTC. It's more of a kind of broad statement to say, if you've got an involvement in CBD, this is what you should be doing. It's much more trusting, I guess, with the ASA, where they're kind of saying, maybe you didn't know about the information, so here's the information that's out there. Whereas the FDA are very much in a case of, we think you know what you're doing and we will catch you. So that just kind of gives you an overview of those different advertising standards anyway. And it's kind of pointing out as well how important it is to really understand what the regulations are in the country that you're selling your product. And especially if you're a global brand and you're looking at marketing in a lot of different countries, understand the regulations, understand the advertising code of conduct in each of those countries to make sure that all of your adverts and all of your claims and all of your evidence is going to be sufficient in those countries. There's also advertising laws, so it keeps going. There's a lot to be aware of. So I wanted to bring this up because in every country, there is advertising laws, whether they have an advertising authority or not. There is always laws as well. It's really important to protect the consumers. Again, it really helps mainly towards things like offensive advertising or anything like that, but it is also about misleading adverts as well. They do have laws about them. So even if there isn't an authority, there will always be laws. So don't think, oh, I haven't seen anyone on ICAS, oh, they haven't adopted the framework. We don't really need to do anything in that country because they don't have an advertising authority. There will still be laws that you can offend. So be very cautious. There will always be something basically to do with adverts and them not being misleading, no matter what country you're advertising in. So I just wanted to pick out some examples again. So in the UAE, you've got the National Media Council, and they have the right to enforce penalties if you upset any of their laws. There's several laws they have on advertising, and I've brought up one of the examples there. Now, they're not the SRO. So in the UAE, you've got the Advertising Business Group, which are the SRO, which have their code of conduct, which have the complaint system. And the National Media Council is something completely separate, who are the ones that are policing those ads and enforcing the penalties. But they also have some really great information. They have really good brochures basically about what the code of conducts are and the best ways to advertise your products and advertise your claims. So don't sort of always see them as something scary. They're not there to kind of stop you. They're actually always providing a lot of information, which is really, really helpful. In the USA, you've also got the FDA, who I've mentioned, so they are making laws. So generally, you know, I said if they're looking at something like CBD, and as well, I said they're kind of different to SROs because what they'll do is if they kind of find lots of issues with CBD, if there was, for example, a certain level of CBD that they found was actually having a negative effect on the consumers, they would create laws about it. So that's what the FDA are really doing. In China, they do have SRO. They've got the China Advertising Authority, but they've also got the China Advertising Law of the People's Republic of China, which has been restated in 2015. And it's basically got more information about consumer protection and tougher rules on advertisers. So again, it's just really important to be aware of what is out there. And these are only 3 examples. This is every country worldwide. So do make sure you do research targeted to which country you're going to be selling in. I also want to bring up COVID-19 again. Like I said, it's something we have to really think about at the moment. And ICAS, the EASA, the FDA, the FTC, and CONRAD, they've all put out information about their code of conduct regarding COVID-19. Basically, they're saying just because COVID-19 is happening, do not think that the code of conduct has stopped existing. It has continued. And there have been a huge amount of cases of people exploiting COVID-19 to make sure they can sell more products, and particularly in the CBD industry, actually. So there's been a lot of information. It's really interesting, actually, and it's a good thing to look at if you've been thinking about advertising a product with CBD for COVID-19. You can do that. It's as long as you're following the code of conduct. So I would really recommend looking up COVID-19 CBD products and complaints, and seeing what exists there, because the main thing is not saying things like it can cure COVID-19, it will prevent it, anything like that, because obviously there's no evidence to say that at this point, and it's, you're probably not telling the truth, and you certainly won't have any evidence to substantiate those claims. The reason is mainly you're trying to make sure you're not exploiting people's fear to be able to sell products. So yeah, like I said, if you are thinking about making CBD products with a marketing angle on COVID-19, make sure that you have a good research there about the code of conduct, but also about what has been what adverts have been taken down already that have been to do with that, so you don't repeat any mistakes. So that's advertising standards as a whole. So like I said, it's a lot of information. I know it's not been very targeted because it really depends on where you're selling in the world, but I hope it's given you an idea of how you can start researching that and what considerations you need to make. Now I want to bring it back to CBD particularly. Let's start talking about what this presentation is about. So the main thing with CBD is to know what category your product is if you're making claims. So the CAP, which are the copy advice team for the ASA, released this information the other day, and it's one of those things that we can't say what you can say or what you can't say about CBD until we know what product category it is, because the claims will always fit under the regulations of what that product category is. So if it's a medicine, you have to look at that MHRA guidance on medicinal CBD and know what's kind of in there. That's really difficult as well to get a medicinal CBD in the UK. So generally you probably won't be doing that. You might be. I'm not saying you won't, but I know a lot of you today will be looking more down the cosmetic, food, that kind of route when you're looking at CBD. And it's a hard process as well. It's a really difficult process to get a licensed medicine, particularly in the UK. So can have a look at that. If you're thinking about it, have a look at that process on the MHRA and get some guidance. In the USA, the Federal Trade Commission Act basically said that all medicinal claims must be substantiated. So there is CBD that's allowed in medicines in the USA. That varies by state to state. So obviously, and I've said that about food as well, it all varies from state to state in the USA. So again, it's not even just looking at which country you're selling in, it's looking literally specifically which state you're selling in the USA, because there are different regulations in terms of the amount of CBD you're allowed, depending on the product category, and then what claims can be made about it. But the main point is that all of your claims must be substantiated. Don't rely on evidence that exists out there already. When you're looking at your own products, if you want to say your product has an effect, do not fall into the trap of saying, well, it contains CBD and there's this evidence on CBD. Does your product have that effect? Take that responsibility, kind of think, do I believe in just using the raw ingredient and will that have everything? Believe in your product, research it, test it on your own panel. Do they perceive these effects when they have tested this product? Because it will really help you when it comes to selling worldwide, not just looking at the USA. If you then want to export somewhere else, you'll need additional evidence, essentially. So really good to get that body of evidence from the beginning and make sure your claims are substantiated. In Australia, the claims are reviewed when registering with the ARTG, so the Therapeutic Goods Authority over there. They will review your claims depending on what they are medicinally when you register them. So that's just have a look at the ARTG basically and see what kind of claims they allow before you put your product in, and then they'll review your claims. So I just want to pick out 3 kind of main countries there, but obviously again it's very different globally. Same with foods, there's obviously different regulations there. The main one in the EU is the novel foods application. If you're a UK company, if you're based anywhere in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, you still have until March 2021 to get your evidence together for your novel foods application. That varies on European countries. Some people already have to have their novel foods applications in, and some people still have a bit of time. That came in January 2019. So if you're not aware of it and you have got a CBD food you're looking at launching, that's very important to be aware of. You need to do a novel foods application. In the USA, as I said, it can really vary from state to state and depends on the legal status of cannabis. So obviously there are certain states that have legalized cannabis as a whole. So CBD products are obviously a lot easier to include in foods over there, whereas other states haven't. So just be really wary about what regulations there are in terms of what you can include in foods. Mainly today I'm going to be talking about cosmetic, because this is where I see the most claims for a start. It's where most consumer research, we can use consumer research for most cosmetic claims. And I know that a lot of you are from cosmetic companies. So hopefully we'll be looking mainly at cosmetics. So CBD is allowed in cosmetics in the EU, but regulations vary on the level and the quality of the CBD globally. So it's globally as well, sorry. So when I say about the quality, there are certain tests you have to have in place about the actual raw ingredient of the CBD, depending on how you're using it. And certainly in the EU, there is only a certain level of THC that's allowed to be traced. It's essentially no THC, but obviously there will always be a certain level of it. So I think it's 0.03 at the moment. So then you need to have that assessed and have those have all that documentation to say that that raw ingredient only contains that level of it. And so that's the level of quantity, but the quality is also needs to be assessed as well. All claims on cosmetics must be in compliance with regulations, including those of the advertising authorities. So again, I'm going to go through some kind of regulations on cosmetic claims, which will apply to every industry as well, but obviously cosmetics in particular. So you basically, if your CBD product is a cosmetic, you just need to follow the cosmetic regulations. So don't think about it as kind of, this is a CBD product, think of it as a cosmetic. Those regulations must be followed. You also have borderline products. To be able to tell if it's a borderline product, you need to think about whether it's the substance or mixture of the product, the site of application. So obviously cosmetic products are anything to do which is exterior to the body, but also the oral cavity. So things like supplements tend to be borderline, because they might be cosmetic claims that you're looking at, but it's a different, you're ingesting it. The function of the product, so does it have a cosmetic function, a medicinal product, is it a kind of borderline product there, and the overall presentation and claims. So to know if your product's going to be a borderline, which can happen in CBD, because a lot of the time you want to have those medicinal claims on it, which of course are very difficult, but also, you know, the application and the way it's marketed might come under borderline rather than a cosmetic. So there's some really interesting information on that on the CTPA website, which is the Cosmetics, Toiletries and Perfumery Association. They have really good guidance about how to tell if your product, what category your product fits into, whether it's cosmetic or borderline. So I'd recommend looking there if you're not sure. So now I'm going to talk about consumer research. As mentioned, that's what I do. It's what my company does. We use consumer research to substantiate claims, as well as for other reasons, but obviously today we're talking about substantiating claims. So as I mentioned, this is where I'm going to sort of talk about what claims you can make for your product by using consumer research, using consumer research as evidence. So consumer research, for those that don't know, are basically based on the consumer's perception of the product. So it's anything to do with what the consumer can perceive with their naked eye. If you're looking at a claim to do with something like wrinkles and fine lines, you may find that you have scientific evidence to say that, you know, the camera has seen that the wrinkle has reduced by this much, with a scientific measurement in there. Whereas consumer research, we are saying, after this consumer has used this product for 2 weeks, they think that their wrinkles are diminished. You may need additional evidence. You may need both. You may need instrumental study. You may need consumer study as well. It really depends on the kind of claim that you're looking to make. But very often you can just use consumer research as long as you've got a substantial panel, and that the study design really supports your claims that you have, your questionnaire design really supports it. And you're not looking at any measurements. So as long as you're not saying it's reduced by 5 times the amount, and you're just talking about the appearance from the consumer's perception, you can say those claims. These are really important claims when you're looking at CBD products again, because we know we can't say things that are medicinal for cosmetic products when it comes to CBD. And this is where everyone kind of has the halt and goes, okay, well, I can't say anti-inflammatory, so I'm not going to say any claims about the product because everyone knows that's what CBD does, and I want that to stand on its own. Instead, we'll be looking at saying things like, this muscle balm made my muscles feel soothed, but we haven't said it's because of the CBD, it's because the consumer has used the product and they agree that that is the perception that they've had on that, they've had of that product. So it's really important for this kind of category, basically. It's usually in-home studies, so we're really reflecting the actual conditions of the product in use as well. So instead of having a dermatologist supply a product, like you do in clinical studies, the consumers are getting the product in their own home, they're reading the usage instructions as it would be on their pack copy, and that's how they're using their product. So it's actually the most reliable results you can use in terms of actual use, in terms of what your consumers are going to perceive. If you don't have consumer research evidence, you can find areas where people complain about the product because when they use it themselves and they follow those usage instructions, they are not getting the same results that were found in maybe a scientific study. There is also part of the EU regulation which states that you need to have evidence about your undesirable effects with the actual condition in use. So consumer studies are really important to make sure that you are gathering any undesirable event data whilst the products are being used by the participants in their own home. So that's it's another kind of reason for it there, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, about how we report undesirable events. So they may be testing the efficacy of one product, they may be comparing it. Again, comparing products is really important with CBD studies, not necessarily on a cosmetic level, but certainly for medicinal claims. If we test a CBD product for a medicinal claim, generally we're looking at least a double-blind placebo test, maybe a triple placebo test. And by saying that, I'm talking about a CBD product, a medicine that's already on the market, and a pure placebo. That would be the best way to test that kind of product. It's the case of any medicine, to be honest. It's not just CBD, but there's a lot more that goes into those tests. You don't kind of just send them the product and home and sort of see if it's improved the medical criteria. You need to have some more evidence there. But it can be the same in cosmetics as well. Maybe you're trying to research yourself whether the CBD makes any difference to your base formula, because it might be that the base formula achieves those claims on its own. You need to be able to prove maybe that the CBD is the thing that has that added benefit. So there's a lot to think about with consumer research, but today we're going to focus on claims. So as I mentioned, the consumer studies substantiate your advertising claims, and they help you test your product efficacy. They ensure your product is regulatory and legally compliant in your chosen markets. So obviously, like I said, you want to test your product in the markets that you're looking to sell your product, not just to abide by the advertising regulations there, but also to make sure that the participants you have in your study are going to reflect the participants that you're selling your product to. So for example, there's no point in testing a cosmetic product in the UK on UK inhabitants when you're going to sell the product in India. There's a very different humidity over there. There's a very different ambient temperature, and there's different skin types as well. There's different skin acceptability. So it's really important that you actually test on the people that you're planning on selling your product to. If you have a global market, you want to pick a global representative of that whole market. So like I said, you don't have to sell in you don't have to test in every single country, but you may want to definitely test. If you're UK, you'd want to do or if you were selling in Europe, you might test in the UK. If you were selling in in the Middle East, you might test in Dubai. If you were selling in Asia, you might choose sort of the more humid Asian countries, as well as some of the less humid Asian countries. It's basically a reflection of the people that you're expecting to sell your products. It can also be really important to sell, again, going back to the actual regulations there as well, certain countries you do actually have to test in their native language. For Thailand, for example, you have to test you have to test in with the questionnaire for your claims in Thai, because when they translate into claims, they like to see that the data has come from Thai language instead of just been translated from English. So there's lots to think about. And you also just find out who suits your product as well, that what kind of demographic is going to suit your product. So you may find that actually, like I said, maybe if you're looking at India and the UK, for example, the UK panel finds that the product's the perfect consistency, it suits their skin really well, and the panelists in India find that actually the liquid of the product was too viscous in the heat. It was too greasy on their skin because, again, it's too hot over there. So it's really important to understand that demographic as well. Some examples of claims that you can make about products through consumer research. So things like 88% of people agree they felt more rested. Again, that's kind of how we can word things we know about CBD. We kind of say, oh, it makes you feel more rested, makes you feel more calm. You can ask that in a consumer research test, as long as the product is suitable and as long as the claim is worded correctly. 9 out of 10 people would recommend this product to friends. So there's marketing claims in there. I would buy this product. I would recommend this product. Again, they're the ones that make you stand out. If you don't want to make product claims about your product that has CBD in it, because you don't want to say those things, those keywords that you know you can't say because it's a cosmetic product, use the marketing claims to make it stand out. Don't just have CBD on your product and rely on that. Have things like 9 out of 10 people would recommend it. 90% said they would buy this. 90% it was better than this other brand they used of CBD. These are the things that can make your product stand out, and they're going to make it sell. I've also got a cosmetic claim in there of 96% of people agree that it's left their skin feeling intensely nourished. These are the kinds of claims that stand out on products. So again, if it's a cosmetic product, get cosmetic claims about your product. That will make your product sell and it will make it stand out. So what are the common criteria for cosmetic claims? So again, this will apply to any industry, but obviously this has been laid out by the EU Cosmetics Products Regulation, where they have 6 common criteria. I find this a really helpful guide whenever I'm looking at designing any study or any questionnaire, and helping my clients, consulting my clients through that process, because it really kind of clearly states, you basically think of these 6 common criteria all the time, and it will help you make sure that your claims are going to be regulatory compliant. So the first thing is legal compliance. You can't say that this product, you couldn't say this contains the legal amount of CBD, because it has to. It has to be legal. You can't use that as a claim for your product to advertise it. You must have a legal regulation of CBD in your product. It has to be truthful. You can't say the product contains CBD if it doesn't. And that sounds really funny, but this is one of the biggest ingredients we've seen that in. There's been a lot of products that have been called off the market because they say CBD oil on them. And then when they're investigated, there's actually no level of CBD whatsoever. So that is where we need to be truthful. Evidential support, you must have some evidence to substantiate your claims. Of course, we've talked about consumer research, but again, you may need scientific research as well. I can certainly help with that. Although I don't conduct the scientific research myself, I have global partners that do, and I will always be very honest if I think you need scientific or instrumental studies to substantiate your claims. It has to be honest. So you can't sort of say 80% of 100 people agreed that this product that this product intensely nourished the skin if the study was only conducted on 50 people. You can't kind of go, well, I've had 88% of 50, so I reckon it'll be the same if I do 100. It has to be honest. You have to have the exact data there. It has to be fair. You can't say that the product performs better than another product if it's not comparable. So for example, you can't sort of say that it's the best leading CBD cosmetic if you've tested it against cosmetics that don't have CBD in them, for example. So that's about being fair there. And informed decision making is quite self-explanatory. Your consumer needs to be able to make an informed decision about the product. And if you go with all the other criteria and you word your claims really clearly and you think about your marketing, it will all fall into place there. So again, I think those all apply to all industries. I think the cosmetics regulation has outlined it really well, but I think no matter what industry you're from, it's a really good way to think about your products. Different types of claims. So the CTPA have broken down a breakdown of claims to guide you on types of research that you need to substantiate them. This is really helpful when you're thinking about, what kind of research is needed. So sensory claims and product aesthetic claims, they are thinking about the product in use. So what does it feel like? What does it smell like? What's the packaging like? It's all those kinds of claims. The performance claims, it's quite self-explanatory. What is the efficacy of the product? How does it work? Does it do what we want it to do when you use it? The ingredient claims, so very much in the case of this webinar, it would be this product contains CBD, that's a claim. Combination claims, this is generally to do with how products work together. So if you had a day and a night cream and a cleanser as a regime, you might want to test them all together and say they work best when they're used together. But you'll need some data to substantiate that. You can't just make a cosmetic range, test them all separately and say, oh yeah, we'll just say they work better together. You have to have some kind of evidence there. Comparison claims, so as mentioned earlier, this could be against another brand, it could be against another formulation, it could be against a formulation that doesn't have CBD in it. But what about fairness? I don't mean to compare it and say it's better than it. I mean in the way it's like you make your own base formulation, one has CBD in it, one doesn't, and you can clearly see that the one with CBD in it has a better effect. That's you proving that your CBD is working. Subjective claims are your consumer research study claims. They're your consumer perception. Subjective claims is anything that only that subject can say about the product, what they believe. I would buy this product, I would recommend this product, this is the best product I've ever used. They are subjective claims. And the objective claims are the scientific claims, the instrumental studies. They're the ones that cannot be, they're not a matter of opinion, it's simply what the data shows. So now I've thought about what kind of claims we can make. I want to just give some examples of where you see those claims. So there's quite a lot that you can look at basically, but I want to kind of look on, I've started off by looking at people's website. So what I'm going to say is for consumer research, your data can substantiate claims for any platform. You're not restricted to say, oh, you can only use it on social media because it's a consumer research study. You can use them on your pack copy, on your website, on your social media, magazines, wherever. That the evidence has substantiated your claims. You can use that evidence on any platform. But I want to show you some examples. So I'm starting off with websites. So I've selected three products here that will have claims on their websites, and it just gives you an example of how that's kind of laid out. You can also put things like percentage claims on your websites. So you can, once you've got that data from your consumer research, you can use those percentage like 88% agree, 90% agree, 9 out of 10 women agree. They can all go on your websites as well. But obviously, if you're going to list any claims, they have to have been substantiated. So it's just giving you an idea of these claims have all been substantiated, and that's what they've been able to put on their website next to their products. Social media again. So things like CBD for Life have the hardest working eye serum you'll ever apply. Hydrates, softens, smooths, calms, cools, reduces puffiness, diminishes dark circles, and can be used for sensitive skin types. That's a hell of a lot of claims, and they're all cosmetic claims. So they can all be said about that product as a cosmetic. It's not thinking about it as CBD. So it's when I'm saying about having a product stand out. If you've got a CBD eye serum, this is your competition. This is the kind of claims that are being made out there, and they're all being made because they're cosmetic claims. So it's really important to think about how you can use that in your advertising as well. There's also another example as well from Blossom brand that are putting out that they've got all these nourishing creams that have been put together, and so yes, will keep you looking and feeling amazing. So these are really consumer research claims. You can't prove that with science. All of the claims on here can be substantiated with consumer research. Claims on labels and packaging as well. So the reason I bring this one up is because pack copy claims obviously need to be substantiated, but it's something that wasn't necessarily being looked at an awful lot by advertising SROs. They were more looking at the other kind of advertising platforms, and they put out a statement to say that this is ICAS put out the statement, sorry, so everyone that's a member of ICAS, they put out a statement to say that all product labels do tend to have claims on them which are advertising. It's not just stating what the product is, there's a lot of advertising on your pack copy. So all of the SROs are looking at the product labels as well. So don't feel like it's just your website and just your social media that's getting monitored. It's also your actual product itself. It's really important because obviously if you think, if you're going back to bricks and mortar, I know it's been a while since we've thought about bricks and mortar shopping, but if you've got two CBD products next to each other, the one that's going to stand out and the consumer's going to purchase is the one that has the most claims on it. If you're kind of not sure of the brands, you've not seen the brands before, you'll be looking at the one with the best claims. So it's really important to make sure that they're substantiated and that they are honest. So I just want to do a case study to put this one into context. This is a cosmetic. So this is a study that we conducted for a leading personal care contract manufacturer. They've got their own brands, but they've also manufactured for people around Europe. So this is one of the cosmetics that they manufactured on behalf of another brand. CBD facial oil. They wanted to substantiate marketing claims for their leading market brand. In particular, they wanted to substantiate the claims for healthier, calmer, nourished skin. Again, all cosmetic claims, and that there's an improvement in skin dryness after 4 weeks of use. So again, think about time frame claims. They're really good as well. People always want to have instant results. A lot of clients that I talk to will first come and say, we want to make sure that the claims all say instantly, which is great. But what's also really good is getting the time frames that say about 4 weeks, because people would continue to use your product for that time. And they'll continue to use it afterwards because they know it takes 4 weeks to have that effect. So it's not, don't kind of shy away from doing the longer claims as well, because they can be a really good way of getting people to use your product. Just to bring it back to the legislation that's out there. So this, again, the market was in the UK that we tested. However, this is an EU brand, and they probably would extend to the EU with their market at a later point. So it's really important to make sure that the study and the claims are fitting with the EU legislation. But the real justification for the reason they have to do this study to substantiate their claims is because the EASA said that you need to be able to provide evidence to substantiate your direct or implied claims, which can be objectively judged. Direct or implied, so you can have direct claims, this product does this, but there are also implied claims, especially with CBD. There's a lot of implied claims if you're saying the product has CBD in it. So it's best to get your direct claims there so you can really substantiate your direct claims and know that they are working. So you're not kind of relying on the implication, you've got substantiation to say what your product can do and what the claims are you're going to make about it. So again, just really important to know what your claims are, know what your category is, know what you can say, and make sure you have that evidence. You should be able to provide it without delay. That's really important. It's cosmetics industry is definitely can be one to retrospectively get evidence on claims. It's something we can do. It's not ideal. You should have the evidence before your product goes on the market. That's the idea, because if someone complains about it, you don't have time. If you've got a 4-week claim and the ESA said they need your evidence today about your product, you can't really wait 4 weeks to get those products tested and get those claims about it. Make sure you've got your evidence basically beforehand. But if you don't, we can certainly help and get that evidence retrospectively. What was the study protocol for this particular study then? So we were looking at the UK. It's a single placement because we're just looking at one product, but not comparing it at all, and it's not part of a regime. 28 days, because obviously we want to get that 4-week claim. We just wanted to look at females because that was the target audience for this product. 18 to 45 years old, we've got a nice wide age range there. They're not too worried about who the age range is. But obviously they don't have too mature skin because it can have a different effect on the skin, and the product can have different effects. Normal and dry skin types we're targeting in particular because we're looking at those moisturizing claims, those nourishing claims. We want to make sure that it's had an improvement on dry skin in particular. We need to replace the current moisturizer with this product. We don't want them to use it as well as their current moisturizers, whether that's, you know, moisturizer, serum or oil. We just want them to use this product. And it needs to be national if marketing data is to be reliable. So basically we're looking at the whole of the UK. We haven't just said we want to have the people from London because this is going to be sold all over the UK. So we want to make sure we have a nice representative panel. So what were the claims? What did we manage to achieve from this study? It's a really good product. We've got some excellent claims here. So just to explain this table a little bit, when you conduct a study with us, you have a breakdown of every single question that you ask, but you also have the appendix 1, which is this table, which breaks down all of the questions you've asked, says the number of people that are satisfied, the number of people that were neutral, and the number of people that were not satisfied, and the percentage of people that were satisfied, the percentage of people neutral, and the percentage of people not satisfied for every single question. This is a perfect questionnaire because we are asking the questions as statements and asking the participants if they agree or disagree with it. It's the best way for claims because we can literally lift these questions straight out of the report and put it straight into our marketing. So for example, the first question, we're looking at the percentage satisfied. We've got 98%. It's an incredibly high claim. Say 98% of people say their skin felt hydrated after use. How excellent is that claim? It's a cosmetic claim. It's not about the CBD, it's about the cosmetic of the product. And if that's on your marketing, you will sell more products. 98% is huge. It's a huge percentage. Same as 96% have nourished skin. 88% said their skin felt calmer. That's one of those kind of CBD claims, but we're using it in a cosmetic sense. We're able to say it. 88% said their skin was left feeling healthier. And 94% got that skin dryness, prevented skin dryness, left my skin feeling moisturized after 4 weeks of use. We have said after our 4 weeks, we've got that improvement in dryness of skin. That was one of the main claims. We've got 94%. Excellent study with really good results. So it just gives you a really good example of how, you know, how good results can be and how you can use those in your marketing then to be able to sell more products. So examples of removed adverts. We've talked about our good claims, how we make our good claims, how we get our evidence. What is the backlash if we do not do that? So I've just kind of pulled up some news headlines because I think the main issue, if you don't have the evidence to substantiate your claims, if you're not following those code of conducts of advertising, if you're not doing it, the main thing that's going to happen is this: you're going to have your brand put into the news. Your brand is going to be put forward as something that is misleading, that's not trustworthy. Don't buy these products. They're not. They haven't got the evidence, and you really don't want that. You really don't want that. So a lot of this is about the FDA cracking down. I kind of wanted to bring that up as well because the reason they've had to say that is because there have been so many misleading adverts in the USA. So the FDA are as a whole cracking down now on adverts about CBD. There's some examples of, like I said, some people saying about COVID-19. So there's a brand or a product called Thrive, which is a supplement. They said it can treat, prevent, and reduce the risk associated with COVID-19. Well, that's just not true. There is no evidence to substantiate that. So that's obviously been brought up. And again, there's another kind of targeted advert from the FDA saying about false claims. So they've got people from false claims so they can treat cancer, Alzheimer's, arthritis, and seizures. There's no evidence to substantiate it. You just simply can't say it if you have not got the evidence. And it's very, very worrying when people put claims like that about what evidence because of what the impact can have on that consumer. So it's just an idea of what, you know, this is what can happen if you don't kind of follow those code of conducts. So that is everything I need to say about the claims. I'm about to go to question and answer in a moment. But firstly, I want to talk about obviously 18 global research, because you've heard, you know, why you need to do consumer research, why you need that evidence, but why should you use us? So I want to talk about undesirable event reporting quickly because I mentioned that earlier. It's a really important part of consumer research. We have real-time undesirable event reporting. So at any point during a study, a consumer can log on and report their undesirable events. The questionnaire has been made in accordance with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. The whole system has been made in accordance with that. And the responsible person or responsible agent, depending on what country you're part of, can have access to that at any point. So they can log in and see those results in real time. So if any undesirable events come in, they have access to that at the touch of their fingers. We've got full product liability insurance. Not every research provider does, but they should. It basically protects you and it protects us for anything that could go possibly wrong during a study. If there was any kind of misinformation out there, whether it was a kind of mistake from, you had an incorrect usage directions, you might have asked the participants to use it twice a day, but actually using it once, you get some irritations that way. It protects everyone essentially. So it's really important to have that. I've never had a product liability case in the time that I've been with it in global research, 8 years. I don't think we've ever had one. So don't panic, but it's just there as a safety net. We've got an ISO 9001, which is to do with our quality assurance and management systems. And we've got an ISO 27001, which is to do with the GDPR. So we get audited on our GDPR compliance, and we have our own in-house data protection officer as well. That's to protect our consumers, make sure their data is anonymous, which is also really important when you're presenting your results, no matter what platform it's on, because you need to have anonymous data there. But it also protects you because it makes sure you're giving us a lot of sensitive information about your products, about your ingredients list. So it really protects you as well, and you can know that your data is safe with us. And we're a partner for the Market Research Society, which basically proves that our research is ethical. We follow their code of conduct. It makes sure that we have the best information for questionnaire design and study design. So you're getting really quality results in an ethical manner. Further advice for consumer studies before we move on to question and answer. Always think about starting a panel size at 100 responses. It really depends on the claims, it depends on the products, it depends on the markets. But I often get asked, how many people should I have on the study? Always think about 100. It provides you with really robust data, generally as a rule. So no matter which market you're going towards, you should have enough data there to fulfill their code of conduct. But also if your results ever come under scrutiny, one of the main things that might happen if the ASA was to look at your results and you only had a small panel is they would just say it's just simply not enough data to substantiate these claims. So 100 responses is a really safe bet to go with. But again, I can provide further evidence, further help there. So if we were looking at maybe an all skin type claim, we might have a larger panel than that because we want to have a substantial amount of each skin type. So we can certainly always help, but it just gives you a kind of guideline there. I said about our product liability insurance, but you must also inform your provider that you're using an external supplier for consumer studies. The samples must have been safety tested. They must be safe to the point that you can release it on the market to your consumer, because essentially at the point of the consumer study, we are putting your products in the hands of consumers. Blind studies must be debranded. So this is for any claim substantiation. We don't want a bias towards the brand. We shouldn't have any branding on there. And your questionnaire design should also support your claims, but we can certainly help with that. So I know that's been a lot of information and I hope that's been really interesting. So I'm going to open up to a Q&A now, and I've already got one question in. So one question that I've come in already. I have seen a lot of adverts on CBD products that claim COVID-19 cure. Would you agree that if those claims aren't true, this would damage the industry as a whole? So funny enough, this has come in just before we discussed that. Yes, it's been so damaging because it means that there is a mistrust in that in the consumers, in the audience, in the market, that now know that there's no evidence to substantiate this. Like I said, this is what's released in the news. It's not that the consumer doesn't know there's any evidence about it. It's that they see the articles that say this product has said CBD can cure cancer, that can cure COVID, and there isn't any evidence about it. So that's going to damage the whole industry. It's the same with any industry, but I think certainly CBD has become something that I've been quite passionate about. Like I said at the beginning, it's something I've really researched, because I think it's one of the most damaged industries in terms of, that misinformation that's been put out there. At the same time, there's the other side of it. I think there's a huge following for CBD. I think there's some really good information out there. But all we can do as an industry is work together, make sure that all claims are substantiated. And if everyone is on the same page and everyone wants the product to work and wants the ingredient to get regulated, and everyone works together to follow those regulations, hopefully it will kind of wash away all of that bad press and start working towards a really substantiated industry. I hope that's answered your question. I think another question's come in. So I see a lot of CBD companies working with testimonials for advertising. What are the differences between working with testimonials and with studies? How far can you go with a testimonial? I usually talk about this, so thank you for bringing this up. So testimonials you can gain through consumer research. So if we were looking at a study for a cosmetic product, we can put testimonials in there. So we can have a free text answer, which would be something like, what do you like most about the product? Now those can then be used as testimonials in your advertising, as long as they reflect the general essence of the data. So if someone says this is the most nourishing product I've ever used, but that claim failed in the questionnaire, you can't use that testimonial. But generally, if they're really positive results and you've got positive testimonials, you'll be able to use those in your marketing. What the issue can be is when people use product reviews instead of any substantiation for their marketing. Now, I've got some really good quotes here from the ASA, the EASA, and Likeness that say product reviews cannot be used to substantiate claims. You can have product reviews on your website, that's absolutely fine, but you cannot rely on them to be evidence to substantiate your claims. You must have claim substantiation. Because as well, what happens is the product reviews then in nature become an advert. Product reviews shouldn't be an advert for your product. They shouldn't be seen as an advert. They are user content. But if it's the only content you have to substantiate your claims, they then become the marketing material, which has to have substantiation behind it. So I hope that kind of explains that. And it's something I'm really, again, quite passionate about, because I see a lot of companies rely on product reviews as their advertising, as their content, but it hasn't got any data behind it. It's not scientific. I know that consumer studies aren't scientific in terms of what they're measuring, but they are scientific in terms of they have a panel, they have a study design, they have a questionnaire design, and they are put on a software with data analysts looking at those results. So it's a science. The sooner it's just product reviews, it's not got any science behind it. There's also a lot of things like fake reviews put out there. We know that Sunday Riley had an issue with it last year where staff were caught putting in fake reviews on the products. So again, it's really unregulated in that sense. So I certainly wouldn't rely on it. So yeah, you can definitely use product reviews, but you always have to have some kind of evidence as well. Do you have any more questions coming in? Okay, so another question in from Anna. If I have a CBD product that is formerly a cosmetic, but I want to attach non-cosmetic claims to it, can I do that? Or will it throw into the borderline category? Really depends on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what claim you're trying to make. Yeah, mainly it depends on what claim you're trying to make. So for example, we can have things like, if we've got a cosmetic and you want to have something kind of medicinal in there in terms of maybe it's suitable for eczema, we can get around putting it into a borderline or medicinal field by saying this product may also be suitable for those with eczema prone skin. There's a particular wording there, and the CTPA have released a bit of information on that as well, which is really handy. But yeah, so you can kind of word it in a way that doesn't throw it into that. It really depends on the claim. So if there's claims that are really medicinal, it may put it into the borderline category, or it might just straightaway put it into the medicinal category. It has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the claim is and what the product is as well. But feel free to reach out after if you want to talk about some particular claims. I may be able to help with that a bit more specifically. So another another question here. What is the minimum percentage agreement in the panel test, which is standard to make a claim? So that's a really good question. It kind of depends on the different countries, the different advertising platforms. Essentially, it needs to be a majority. So a majority, a statistical majority, we say is a 66% majority. So we kind of use that as a basis claim. However, there are some advertising platforms that won't allow that. So things like television in the UK, you have to have 70% of people agree with it to be able to use it as a claim in television. So generally we say 66% is the statistical majority, but I would probably always aim for about 70% because it means 70% is kind of the highest that I've seen for any advertising platform. So if you reach your 70%, you are very confident knowing that you can put those claims where you need them to be and that they will be accepted there. But there's not always a guideline. There's some countries that haven't got any guideline at all. They just kind of say a majority. But also, I always say, what do you feel confident with? Would you be confident saying that your product can do something if it's under 66%? I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't want to kind of make those claims about my product and kind of get away with it. You want to be really honest with your consumers again. You don't want to mislead them. You want to know that you've got some data to say your product can do what it can do. So yeah, generally I would aim for about 70% because it gives you the most confidence that you're going to be able to use those claims on lots of different marketing platforms. Okay, so another question come in. Are you aware of any evidence of efficacy of CBD in skincare as opposed to efficacy of products which happen to also contain CBD? Are we obliged to inform the consumer of this crucial evidence? Is it legal to be implying the efficacy comes from the CBD? This is a very interesting question. And this is where I have sort of said before, it's kind of the least regulated and most regulated kind of ingredient in cosmetics and things like that. There are certain cosmetics that they are very clear that you need to have a certain level of an ingredient in it to be able to make the claim. That probably exists for CBD in every market. I haven't looked at every market completely to be able to know what that is, but there probably is a regulation on what level of CBD must be legal in the product to be able to make that claim. So it's something definitely worth researching, and I'm probably going to research that myself to be able to look into it. But obviously, if it's only got traces of CBD in it, you can't really say that it's got CBD in it. And again, this is where consumer research is really important as a whole. Even if a product has an ingredient in it, I always say test that final product and get the claims based on what that product is rather than what the ingredient is. Don't rely on that ingredient. Just know that I've tested this product. This is the opinion. They have perceived that these are the effects. And you're not relying on saying it's got CBD in it. You know that product can do that. But I kind of, it's kind of a moral error in sort of saying, maybe the product could do that anyway without CBD in it. That's very much a consideration, and it's something that's really been talked about in cosmetics as well, because there's arguments about the level of CBD that would have to be present to have an effect. If you are, as a manufacturer or something, curious in that matter, and you want to prove it, I would say run a study, have, like I said, have two bases, say one's got CBD in it and one doesn't have CBD in it. And then you can be really confident saying this product is better because it's got CBD in it. So it's kind of your own marketing tool there as well. If you want to be able to say CBD definitely works, it's definitely something that we've invested in, we want to use it in our products, and this is why, it's because it's better. That's a really good way of marketing it. You certainly can't say that it's got CBD in it if it doesn't. You certainly can't say anything about the product if it's not been tested in its final form. And then there's certainly considerations about the level that has to be present to be able to start saying it, and maybe some research there in terms of your confidence in the ingredient and the claims you're making about comparisons. So sorry, that's not been the most direct answer ever, but it's something that's it's like any ingredient, it's ever changing. The research, because it's such a new ingredient, there's not enough research behind this ingredient to say what it explicitly does or doesn't do. And until people keep on researching it, until people keep on making the products and having the research behind the claims, that is when we will really see this kind of body of evidence that we're very confident in the abilities of CBD. So yes, it's certainly going that direction anyway. Do we have any more questions before I move on? When I email this as well at the end, guys, I'm going to email the webinar recording, and it'll be from my direct email. So please feel free to email back if you have any questions, if you kind of think any questions that you didn't think to ask during the webinar. That's absolutely fine. You can just email it for another point. So I'm going to finish the Q&A there. I'm just going to finish up by talking about the SCS. So our managing director is part of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. She's on the council. So we're quite passionate about the Society of Cosmetic Chemists and everything that's going on with them. So I want to talk about the SCS diploma, which is the distance learning course. You can do this anywhere in the world because it's distance learning. And it's a recognised course in the essentials of cosmetic science. So if you want to open up your education there and learn a bit more about cosmetic science, but you wouldn't be able to do it from the comfort of your own home, please take a look at that website. And there's also going to be the 32nd IFSCC Congress, which will be held in London on the 19th to 22nd of September 2022. And you can register your interest there now on their website. And that is the presentation for today. I'll just check, oh no, I was checking it wasn't a question, but thank you, Clary. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is my contact information for the company, number, email. Like I said, you can email me directly. I'll be sending out an email at the end of today's webinar with the presentation. So feel free to email back with any questions you have. I really hope you enjoyed that. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of regulations out there. I will be holding another webinar in the next coming months, which I'll be co-hosting with Penn and Tech, who are a consultancy firm for regulations in the EU and also worldwide. They'll be focusing very much on the food application process, the regulations there, and I'll be very much focusing on what I talked about today, but with a bit more panel discussion there as well. So that will all be posted on LinkedIn. I'll be sending this out to everyone who attended today. I'll be sending out an invite if anyone's interested in CBD. So hopefully you'll find that really interesting. Thank you again for listening, and I will speak to you all soon.